talking about some I don't fuck with her. You can't fuck with me. Just say that. Don't say you don't fuck with me. You can't. And that's why you're mad.
I don't want the nigga no more. Each and every one of you who've tried your damnedest and did anything to get this man these past few years, you can have him. I'm finally content with the fact that I've received the absolute best parts of this man that no one will ever see again. And I'm also content with the fact that I've gotten the absolute worst parts of this man that no one will never see again. I'm finally okay with the fact that...
Now behind bars, Savannah police have arrested Terrell Nelson for the murder of his former girlfriend, Cantrell Hayes Ross. He's now facing murder, aggravated assault, and parole violation charges, all in relation to this shooting.
We wanted to let everybody know and, give him a chance to come out because she's known. And she's not known for being a bad person.
That 911 call on Thanksgiving morning, 2024, was the final punctuation mark on a story that had been writing itself for months. It was the period at the end of a sentence that everyone, friends, family, even casual observers on social media, could see being typed out, letter by painful letter. When police arrived at the 1400 block of Augusta Avenue in Savannah, Georgia, they found 34-year-old Cantrell Hayes Ross at her daycare, the Friend Zone Learning Center. She had been shot multiple times. She died right there, in the place she built with her own hands and heart. The immediate facts were stark, the scene tragically clear. But in the age of the digital footprint, a crime scene is no longer just a physical space. It's a timeline. It's a collection of posts, comments, shared photos, and deleted history. And in the case of Cantrell Hayes Ross, the most critical evidence of what went wrong wasn't found on that asphalt. It was found online, in plain view, a public archive of a private collapse. Before we dive into this digital autopsy, a sincere and massive thank you to the true crime Unravelled community. You on YouTube and you on Facebook and TikTok as True Crime Unravelled TV. You're the reason we do this. We read every single comment, every theory, every shared personal story. That engagement isn't just a number to us. It's a conversation. So, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Please keep it coming. Now, let's rewind the tape. Not to the night of the shooting, but to a moment of public declaration months earlier. February 2024. For Cantrell Hayes Ross, it was time to make it official. She posted photos on social media with her new boyfriend, Terrell Nelson. The caption was buoyant, talking about date night every Friday night, food, lights, music, and lingerie. It was the classic portrait of new love. But if you looked closer, past the hopeful text, the pictures themselves whispered a different story. There was Cantrell, her smile wide and genuine, her energy practically vibrating through the screen. This was a woman who was the life of the party, the rock of her family, a daycare owner who played chef, teacher, bus driver, and counselor. A woman who built a sanctuary for children from the ground up. And then there was Terrell. In photo after photo, his expression was a closed door. Distant. Disconnected. Sometimes he looked outright annoyed, his body language turned away, even as she leaned in. Friends commented on it later. They said the vibe was off. They said his aura was dark. But in the moment, those comments were just whispers in a sea of heart emojis. Cantrell, by all accounts, was a fixer, a builder, not just of businesses but of people. She saw broken things and wanted to make them whole. And in Terrell Nelson, what did she see? She saw a project, a man who, by any objective measure, was a catastrophic risk. Terrell Nelson was 31 years old with a resume that wasn't just a red flag. It was a 5-alarm fire, 10 prior arrests, charges including armed robbery, aggravated assault, possession of a firearm. He'd been tried for murder in 2013 in the shooting death of a man on his front porch. He was acquitted, but the stench of that accusation never really left. He'd been released from prison in 2021 after serving 3 years for, you guessed it, armed robbery and aggravated assault. This wasn't a man with a hidden dark side. This was a man whose entire shadow was a matter of public record, a case file anyone could pull. Yet, Cantrell looked at that record and didn't see a warning label. She saw a blank space where she could write a better story. So she poured herself into him. She became his cheerleader, his support system. She helped him with job training programs. She encouraged him to reconnect with his children. She offered emotional stability and likely, given his history of instability, financial and practical support too. She was, in the parlance of our time, pouring from her cup. And for a while, she seemed to believe he was drinking from it, that he was growing, changing. Her social media became a curious mix of proud business owner and hopeful romantic, offering unsolicited but heartfelt relationship advice alongside photos of a man who rarely seemed to match her enthusiasm. But by the summer of 2024, the cup was empty. And this is where the story shifts from private struggle to public testimony. Cantrell didn't just quietly fade away. She took to the very same platform where she'd announced her love, and she declared her depletion. In a series of posts, she didn't use vague language. She was specific, raw, and exhausted. "I poured out my cup so much for him," she wrote, "and now that my cup is empty, he won't even give me a sip back. I feel used and abused." Let's sit with that for a moment. This wasn't a text to a best friend. This was a broadcast. It was a cry for help written in the sky for her entire network to see. She was publicly stating she was in a dynamic that was draining her life force. She talked about repairing herself, about knowing her worth. She was, in real time, trying to reclaim her power in the most modern way she knew how, by posting her truth. And how did Terrell Nelson respond to this public accounting? Not with introspection or apology, but with a campaign of digital attrition. He'd comment with passive-aggressive, dismissive phrases like, "Be good, God bless you," a tactic designed to make her look like the unstable one. He went back to her old, happy posts featuring the two of them and requested she delete them, an attempt to erase the evidence of their past, to control the narrative. When she refused, standing her ground in the comments section for all to see, his insults became more direct. He called her ugly. He demeaned her. The entire, ugly dissolution of their relationship was playing out not in a closed room, but in the comment section of Facebook, a modern-day coliseum where their conflict was spectator sport. This forces a difficult, almost painful question. When a tragedy is being previewed so openly, what is our role as the audience? We're all armchair detectives after the fact, but what about being frontline responders during the crisis? When we see a friend, a family member, even an acquaintance posting clear signals of being in a toxic, draining, potentially dangerous relationship, signals they themselves are naming, what stops us from moving beyond a like or a private "you okay"? Is it politeness? Is it the fear of overstepping? Or is it the simple, tragic truth that we've become accustomed to treating our social media feeds as a highlight reel, and when the lowlights intrude, we don't know how to process them as real cries for help? Cantrell finally did the hardest thing. She made the private decision public. She ended it. She blocked him, moved on, and focused on pouring back into herself and her business. For a woman like her, this was an act of tremendous strength. But for a man like Terrell Nelson, this wasn't just a breakup. It was a demolition. She wasn't just leaving a boyfriend. She was revoking his lifeline, stripping away his primary source of validation and support. She was showing him that the project was over and he had failed. And in the economy of a narcissistic, violent personality, that kind of loss is not just an insult. It's an existential threat that demands an overwhelming response. That response came in the early hours of Thanksgiving. He arrived unannounced, uninvited, at the Friend Zone Learning Center. He begged for another chance, a return to the status quo, where she gave and he took. Cantrell Hayes Ross, fortified by her hard-won clarity, told him no. It was the final, definitive rejection. And in that moment, Terrell Nelson resorted to the only language of power he truly understood: violence. He pulled out a gun and shot the woman who had tried to save him. He shot her multiple times, ensuring there would be no more posts, no more declarations of worth, no more rebuilding. He silenced the narrative for good. The aftermath was both swift and agonizingly slow. The Savannah Police Department, aided by ShotSpotter technology and community tips, arrested Terrell Nelson just 3 days later. The charges were serious: murder, aggravated assault, parole violation. The legal machinery began to turn. But parallel to that, another story unfolded online. The story of grief. Cantrell's stepmother took to Facebook, her post a raw wound. "You took my stepchild away from us. You took her away from her daycare children who loved her so much. You are a coward." The community held a vigil, releasing purple balloons. Her cousin spoke of finding solace in one of Cantrell's own final, philosophical posts. "Praise God, Jesus who tests his children." He held on to her faith. But it's enough to make you wonder, what do we call a test that, despite all the public warnings, you cannot seem to pass? The family now faces the glacial pace of justice. They have one public, unwavering demand for the district attorney's office: no plea deals. The punishment, they insist, must fit the crime. They are advocating not just for their daughter, sister, aunt, but for the principle that a history of violence should lead to maximum accountability. So, where does that leave us? This case is not a whodunit. Terrell Nelson is in jail. This is a how could this happen unit, and the answer, unsettlingly, is that it happened in slow motion in public. It's a case study for our times, where the evidence of a coming storm is often hidden in the plain sight of our news feeds. It challenges our notions of privacy, intervention, and community responsibility in a world where the lines between our digital and physical lives have completely blurred. We at True Crime Unravelled live for your perspectives. This is a complex, layered tragedy. So, I want to put this to you. In the digital age, what does see something, say something actually mean? When the red flags are virtual, what does tangible intervention look like? Should we be looking at our friends' social media posts not just as updates, but as potential wellness checks? And perhaps the hardest question, can public shaming or calling out on a platform ever be an effective tool against private manipulation, or does it only escalate the danger? The comment section is your space. Let's talk about this honestly. If this deep dive into a tragedy that unfolded before our eyes hit home for you, if it made you reconsider the scroll through your own feed, please hit the thumbs up button. It genuinely helps this channel reach others who need to be part of this conversation. And to ensure you're here for every story we unravel, subscribe to True Crime Unraveled on YouTube and tap that bell icon. Take care of each other, both online and off.
On the news at noon, I'm Mike Seela. We just found out Savannah police made an arrest in that deadly shooting that happened on Thanksgiving of a woman who owned a daycare. Our Madeline Bierster joins us now live in the studio with the WTOC update.
Mike, the boyfriend of that woman, is now behind bars. Savannah police have arrested Terrell Nelson for the murder of his former girlfriend, Cantrell Hayes Ross. He's now facing murder, aggravated assault, and parole violation charges, all in relation to this shooting. At midnight, just before Thanksgiving, SPD responded to that scene based on a shot spotter notification, but it was too late to save Cantrell from her injuries. Nelson has an extensive criminal history and prior run-ins with law enforcement. The most recent charges, dating back to 2018, records show he was just released from prison in 2021 after serving 3 years for armed robbery and aggravated assault, along with some other charges. Savannah police say this shooting took place at 1401 Augusta Avenue. Police say Cantrell was shot multiple times at the daycare facility she owned, Friend Zone Learning. Now, this weekend, her family gathered to honor her and speak kind words about the kind of woman Cantrell was. She was just 34 years old. Family brought out her favorite colored balloons. They listened to music together. They also held a candlelight vigil to reminisce about the light Cantrell brought to the world. Her parents remember their daughter as the woman who would do anything for anyone, who had a passion for childcare and will be missed sorely.
It's very, very difficult, but we wanted to let everybody know and, you know, give them a chance to come out because she's known. And she's not known for being a bad person. If she can help you, she'd rather help you than hurt you. And kids was her passion. These kids were her life. They were her life. But she was an outgoing person. She was real live, always the fun of the bunch. And she just was a great person all over. There wasn't nothing she wouldn't do.
The suspect, Nelson, was also accused of murder back in 2013. Nelson, who was 19 at the time, along with another man, were originally charged. Both men were later acquitted. We're going to continue to bring you more updates throughout the day here on WTOC. Mike, back to you.